Introducing Managed Mesh, a new powerful way to configure private WAN networking. Managed Mesh is a new mode of private WAN introduced in version 6.5 that improves upon existing private WAN functionality. The primary focus of Managed Mesh is scalability and performance. Dynamic routing has been added to bonders and aggregators, including BGP, OSPF, and Babel routing protocols. Additionally, static routing may be configured. With a single touch, enabling private WAN with Managed Mesh immediately sets up everything needed for communication between bonds in a given space. Managed Mesh establishes a VXLAN mesh between aggregators automatically, with dynamic routing to provide bond-to-bond private WAN communications. Performant and secure encryption is provided through state-of-the-art cryptography by WireGuard. This video will walk through a managed mesh configuration for an example customer with bonds in two separate regions, each with their own data center. Managed mesh will be used to provide connectivity between the bonds, with dynamic routing to the data center network for failover and redundancy. A corporate firewall is hosted in each data center, alongside hosted services. Pictured here is an overview of the customer architecture. Highlighted in red on the bottom are the connected IP networks defined on the bonds. The data center networks are also shown. There are 4 steps to configuring Managed Mesh on your management server. Enable Managed Mesh Private WAN on the space. Configure Managed Trunk interfaces on aggregators. Add VLAN assignments for the space. And add an OSPF routing protocol to the space. First, on the Private WAN tab of the customer space, enable Private WAN. Be sure to choose Managed Mesh as the mode. Next, designate an interface on each aggregator to be the Managed Trunk interface. Managed Mesh will use the space interface to automatically create VLAN interfaces as necessary. On the aggregator details page, click Add next to the interfaces list. Enter your VLAN trunk interface name. Also, set this interface as a Managed Trunk interface. You should now see your Managed Trunk interface in the list. The next step is to define VLAN assignments on the space, one for each routing group. A VLAN assignment defines a VLAN ID and an IP address pool that will be used for each aggregator that hosts bonds in the space automatically. For this example, the Vancouver routing group will use VLAN 400. We will also set up some exclusions to account for devices already in the network, such as a firewall or server. On the Private WAN tab of the space, under Aggregator Routing, click the Add button next to the routing group VLAN assignment list. Specify the routing group, the VLAN ID, and the IPv4 pool. You can list as many exclusions as you wish in a comma-separated list. After adding a similar assignment for New York, the VLAN assignments are complete. Clicking the caret in the list will expand the assignment to show which VLAN interfaces have been automatically created on aggregators in the routing group. You can also see the managed VLAN interfaces that were created on each aggregator details page in the interface list. Our next step is to define a dynamic routing protocol that will run on any aggregators that host bonds from the space. In this example, we can use the same OSPF routing protocol and settings in both our regions. Managed Mesh also allows you to define protocols per routing group. On the Private WAN tab of the space, click Add next to the protocol list. The name is optional, but lets you write a short description of what this protocol is used for. You can specify one or more routing groups for this protocol to be active in. From the protocol dropdown, choose OSPF. You can also select BGP, Babel, or static, depending on your data center configuration. Continuing with our example, scroll down to add an OSPF area. Define your area, for example, Area 0. The protocol configuration is now complete. Let's take a closer look at what has been configured. Managed Mesh has set up the VLAN interfaces and OSPF protocols automatically on AGO1 and AGO2 as they host bonds in the space. The VLAN interfaces have been created and IP addresses assigned from the pool. The core network exports routes to the aggregators via the OSPF protocol configured earlier, for example, a default route and a route for some hosted services. The aggregators export routes for connected IPs, routes, and more to the core network. At this point, Managed Mesh configuration is complete. For next steps, move the bonds between aggregators and verify connectivity. Add protocol filters to prevent unwanted routes from being exported to the core from the aggregators, or vice versa, and review documentation on dynamic routing for more advanced configuration. Managed Mesh is just one of the new features added in 6.5. The full dynamic routing support added to bonders and aggregators allows many new scenarios, including highly available bonders, routing integration with MPLS networks, and much more. For more information and detailed application notes, consult your documentation or contact your sales representative.